All right. So I just have energy for this. There's no, just leading up to this, I was thinking about how, like, actually, probably a better contextualizer here is that I started listening to like how to create like a great YouTube um, channel, like webinar. And I was like, "Ooh, I don't know if I can do." Like, there's just a lot about strategy that it's really with the end result, like where the end result is really about um creating a really niche audience is like one part of it. I'm gonna close this thing out. Sorry. Like creating a super niche audience and really like at the end result being like a desire for monetization, and that drives the process, like the driving factor of like the process of posting on YouTube is ultimately um like really monetization without necessarily a clear notion of like why, other than I think like, you know, like making money, like paying your bills and your own individual aspirations and that stuff. So I'll tell you mine is discoverability. There's one thing where it's like my effort to put this content out into the world so that anyone could conceivably find it. So that's one thing as far as an interest in like improving the production and improving the strategy on this. But I still don't know exactly who it is who's supposed to find this, other than people that are connected to, in kind of in the same way I am connected to this. So there's that. So that like sort of, kind of is like I guess maybe like antithetical. And also a lot of, one of the things about consuming a lot of popular culture media, like YouTube even, and Instagram, TikToks, which I love, is that most people that are putting themselves forward in these forums want like either have a constructed notion of their backstory, or they're trying to like orchestrate thought leadership, and that's something, if in total candor, has been a challenge for this with me, is that I'm not interested in being a public persona. I'm interested in this being in the world, and right now this is the only way that I know to do it, or I can see, and it does make sense that I'm talking about it. I mean, especially this forum of like giving more of an explanation for it to help kind of tease out, the the textbook here that we have here. Yeah. And so it's been something that, I think about, which is that it's like, most of the people that want to teach you how, like there's an aspect of wanting validation. And my desire for validation, or in the that falls under kind of in within this, is that I want to unify people that I know are in this same space of contemplating and like really searching and doing like the process I was in, which is to recover yourself. It's like, how do it's like there's feelings of this sort of like lostness that it's just like, I just want to be alive. I just want to feel alive. And, I want to know myself. And so, hi, glove friend, Sam. There's, but so, I mean, that was that. And so that's like kind of some of the things that like present like that there's just sort of like stewing. I'm not even like spending a lot of time thinking about them, but they're definitely like sort of in the, I don't know what you call it, but in my consideration for this and even where this is going and what I'm building with it, because I have a lot of aspiration for it that is not related to what I'd call personal. Like it's just such a hard thing. It's the more this practice, the more my practice, the more my practice develops, the less interest I have in other people seeing me. But and I'm finding I have an enhanced desire to connect, in a way that's really authentic and like joyful and happy, and I don't know that without being able to uncover and unearth aspects of what is contained in this methodology and in my own experience with it, that the ability to connect, I mean, it's kind of like it's like the it's like when people show the pressure washing, where it's like the like grime, like the moss or whatever is being like blasted off and there's like kind of new brick there. That to love and to connect is for me with with like like with having a high level of adaptation around fear, around my own emotional literacy and regulation within myself, my own sense of self as someone who stands like as an individual who can like enter into a situation without trying to like absorb identity through it. And then, the ability to connect with other people. That's one of the things that this makes possible when practiced. This is one of the things that makes possible. And this would be my ambition with this. And I don't have that much, like the notion of like, how to make something like this sustainable. I know that anything that connects to human need can become sustainable because the things that we're willing to spend money on are the things that like provide notions of relief for these tensions that we have in ourselves. So anything that comes forward that's like, here I get, it's like the promise of being able to like relieve tension. So my concern about this being able to be something, ultimately what I'd love this to be something that can expand out into the world. And so as a result of that, that means that there needs to be an organization associated with this, and that there needs to be organization associated with this, and that it is organized. There's a tremendous opportunity for this to be co-opted, by people who have who have hungers for things that they haven't actually consciously surfaced, and built, and like softened or disintegrated adaptations around. Yeah. I mean, it's powerful. And I do think that one of the things with this book being as impassable as it is, the thing is like, This book is it is a textbook. It's hard. I mean, I'm kinda like my head's ginormous, so it doesn't really I'm just looking for, like, a regular book here, to just provide some comparison. Um, but, the idea that this book is massive. Where's a regular size book? I don't wanna pull one up because it's gonna, like, fall over, but it'd be, like, kinda like this big, right? And right, it's massive. Part of that is, I think, like, really is kind of, like, creates a bit of a gate, for folks who could misuse how potent this is. I think the barrier of entry is a protection against the potency of what is contained in this. Because you're dealing like, every piece I mean, every single piece of this, and it is like an orchestra of components that are all being presented. I mean, how many individual components of this of this reading is like every single one is kinda, like, steering into something, and it's within a larger, context and framework, so it's, yeah, I think that I think the kind of the requirement of at the moment for this, like, protects it in a way. Yeah. I mean, it's like, I look at it and it's like, underneath, like, adaptations, like, these, like, patterns, beliefs, there's really, like, innocence and integrity, underneath it all. It's innocence and integrity, and what we wanna do is, like, connecting to that and realizing that to operate in the world, there are protections, there are boundaries, there are things that, the adaptations to literally eliminate them, it's like we have to still stay living in this world. So the idea that it's like I'm just, like, a pure being of light, of innocence and integrity is not gonna happen, It's not gonna happen for anyone as a human being. I mean, I think the closest you can possibly get, like, and this is just me sort of riffing here, is like a renunciate who lives in relative isolation and, where you have monks, nuns, or whatever, where it's like this purity notion, but they do live within a culture. There are politics about how they live and they operate. They still live in a culture, and both they're beholden to culture, like, the things related to the culture, um, and also oblivious. They're afforded a certain, like, level of oblivion unless it comes and knocks on their door. So, like, renunciation, this, like, notion that there is purity in a vacuum, So, this is so the thing with this is that it's like we're not the end result here is not that it's like we're not trying to, like, pressure wash and become, like, virgin, like, whatever, because the brick is still out in the environment, the brick that just got pressure washed, the whatever, it still is in the environment, and so it's to see the adaptations and to be able to soften them and to be able to, like, actually work with them in a way where can become, like, expand our capacity and become more dynamic and responsive and moving and, like, alive. That's it. That's it. This idea that there's this place we go where we've, like, achieved full parinama ascension, it's like right now you have it. Like, right now. It's like the idea that's like, I was talking with someone today, and they're like, "Well, I have all this work to do to get to this and blah," etcetera. And the thing is, like, no, right now you have it. If you can completely accept yourself, if you can completely accept yourself, it's right now. It's not, it's not like once I absolve and once I take it's like yeah. And so little by little, we're just teasing open the knot, the tangle. Just get a little more space, and I was thinking about yoga because I saw an aloe yoga at like full size ad with somebody I know, and I was thinking about the person, and I was thinking they're this like tiny little kind of like twink gymnast. It's like this bright, sparkly, young person. And I just thought about how, like, this notion in the physical world of yoga that's like, God loves this implication, like, God loves, like, gymnasts, because they can ascend to these high levels of these practices, and it's like, look, the thing with yoga, I mean, none of the ancient, like, texts really get into asana that much, like, the thing is, like, asana is used to actually, like, move. You're like, actually, it's, like, really very parinama, actually, it just occurred to me, is that you're discharging so that you can be still, and you can actually, like, get into a relationship with yourself, and, like, for yeah, geez, that is it. Meditation, and I think one of the things with Western yoga, is like, and the world over now, the world over has this issue, is that we're so highly traumatized that our bodies are just full of like frozen, limited mobility, stiffness, um, and so, like, physical, like, asana yoga actually is, like, helping open that. It's helping open that, and this is one of the things that passively happens in a yoga practice, is that folks get this component of actually getting into the somatics, but the thing is if you do not have, if you're in the physical realm of this and the reflex, and you do not have these other notions, and this is even reflected in the 8 limbs of yoga to a certain, it's like, where it's like, okay, well, you have the pranayama, you have the asana, and like, of course there's like the sort of like ways to live, the foundational yamas and niyamas, but it's like, the thing is like, what you're ascending into is like these other aspects of ourselves and unifying them. And this is what we're doing here too. Like, this is a yoke where we're yoking reflex with emotion, with logic. And without being able to connect all of these things together, the other parts will wind up kind of continuing, like, so in the tangle. So you can release the reflex, and then that kind of can naturally create some relief. But you see a lot of people who are, kind of so-called advanced yoga practitioners who are still crippled by belief systems. Like, they're very associated with the early adaptations. So, yeah, and even like really leaning into the areas they understand and feel comfortable in, but that's not all the time. But I'm just saying that, yeah, it's like God loves gymnastics. I really loved it. I really, I will say it's something I miss that. I miss that. Oh, I miss the thing about having that practice, mm, every day. to show up for every day. I miss that a lot. But, the thing is that it was creating rigidity. So what was originally like liberating was starting to like cause a lot of damage and pain in my body. Oh, I miss it though. Anyway, so here we are. Yes, here we are. Um, yeah, talking about cultural belonging with Anima and Animus. And so, full circle here, I guess, to yeah, kinda there isn't a huge full circle. But the one thing I will say is, like, the full disclosure of my ambition being unity with people that are really interested in knowing themselves and loving themselves, being in that community. I mean, it is really yeah. Mhm, mhm. But, I will say that even like, there's an interesting thing, though, is that the deeper my practice goes, the more my relationship with myself becomes really has this extraordinary quality, and right now, that's what I'm really working, like, really sort of, like, I don't know, knowing into. I wanna say leaning, but it's not. It's, like, expanding or what is it? It's almost like one of the things that I used to have as, like, a visual when I was practicing yoga is when I breathe into my heart, that it always felt like I look if like it always like the visual would be like a black coal with an ember inside of it, and I could see the ember glowing, but is coming through the black, and there wasn't very much that was visible, but the stoking of it would yeah, and it's like the falling off of the black, like the soot, where it's like if you see coal cement, it's like kind of like a hardened, yeah. So, mm, yeah, I'm not gonna say any more about that. Maybe later. But so okay, so this section that I'm reading today that we are together in, we're on page 166. We're in the themes of the fourth hub. And, I think for whatever reason, I don't feel the need as much to like do this like summary of being like, here we is where we are in the plot, because I think with the first, second, and third hubs that, we're talking about physical security and trust, the bone deep trust that creates and makes possible. And even, and like the thing with that is even the idea that it's like, well, the world's unstable. Well, the things that we do in hypervigilance don't really change that very much. They don't change that very much. Yeah. And then the ability to like feel and enjoy and connect and attune and like, hmm. Second hub. Third hub, to stand on our own. The lighthouse doesn't go around an island looking for boats to save. It just stands and it shines. And now we're between the beast and the angel, as Rumi put it, and we're beginning to move into this like really transitional stage in this process, which has to do with like social belonging or belonging with ourself. Yeah, and also the impact of, like, societal interruption in the development of this hub, that's definitely part of this. So are you ready to read? Thanks for listening. If you're watching this, this feels really. I'm finding this is a real like I used to write a lot up until very recently. Like the archives, the Parknoma archives are deep, where there's just cases of things I've written, piles of notepads, piles of these huge sheets where I'd write on. That doesn't do as much for me right now, and I don't know why. It doesn't have the flow like this has flow for me. So yeah, I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to just be here and speak into the great, yeah, the greatness, the vastness. Yeah, it just occurred to me that I look kind of stoned, which is no shade on anyone, but I don't smoke pot. It's a good time to some of these videos. My eyes look a little kind of squinty. Oh, yeah, sleepy or whatever. Maybe they'll get bigger once we get into the sixth hub. Grow my eyes. Okay. So, cultural belonging as it relates to gender. We'll just call it out. Cultural belonging as it relates to gender. There it is. But the real, like, kind of snazzy way I put it here is cultural belonging with Anima and Animus. So, let's do it. Okay, so the traditions of a culture, food, music, holidays, and other customs and conventions can be like a glue that holds people together. Belonging to a culture is the deep familiarity and comfort of home that can be shared and experienced anywhere. The food that was cooked for us as children connects us to the same meals shared by our ancestors. And the deeper we go into their traditions, the more connected we tend to feel with ourselves. Years ago, I was lonely and alone in Germany around Christmas time. The evergreen wreaths with candles, the advent calendars with little picture windows for each day of December, the sugar coated Christmas fruit bread, along with the imagery and decoration, linked me to deep feelings of connection. The depth of my response surprised me as both soothing and joyful. Yeah, appreciating that. Appreciating that. Yeah. Yeah. Culture, with its associated faith traditions, can also represent painful restrictions of personal integrity and self expression. Gender, for example, is often reduced to simple roles that serve cultural order and assign duties and obligations. But gender identity reaches into profound aspects of how we experience ourselves. Carl Jung described the anima as the unconscious feminine side of a man, and the animus as the unconscious masculine side of a woman. See chapter 6. This alludes to an inner paradox, one that transcends the traditionally binary view of gender. Some cultures' origin stories begin with the genders merged and aver that humans were created through separating this unification. So, yeah. So some cultures' origin stories begin with the genders merged and aver that humans were created through separating this unification in a deity. Yeah. I mean, the Hindu tradition of this very like separation is like Shanti and Shakti. Is that what it is very, very like, and of course it predates biblical stories. It has a lot of sort of like, that can point to some, the origin story that is like very familiar for Judeo-Christian folks as far as like Genesis. hmm So, oh, well, what do you know? I'm so glad I like spoiler alert. I should just put spoiler alert on everything I say. I should just I should just instead of saying or whatever, I should just say spoiler alert. So some cultures' origin stories begin with the genders merged to aver that humans were created through separating this unification. Scholars examined translations of the origin of the Adam and Eve story and found that they were also separated from this merged state. Not that Eve was grown from Adam's rib. Yeah, I mean, I'll personally say, like, reading the Bible is part of my scholarship for this content and reading a lot of different religious texts. Um, in this process, I mean, one thing is like you read like the really, popular like biblical translations because they're translations. I mean, this is a thing where it's like the word of God, it's like through a game of telephone. Like this was not originally written in English. That's I mean, also like Jesus is like a Middle Eastern guy and is like, white is the driven snow. It's like I mean, honestly, it's really discouraging because it's like the level of dissonance is just like so extraordinary that it's like, it's like I'm gonna die for Christianity or just like stand by my principles while, while it's like brown people are like, like part of celebrating like it's like it's discouraging because it's like, oof, how far does this have to go for people to like wake up and set themselves free? This isn't really about like they're dumb. It's like this is back to the thing of these adaptations. This is social stuff. We're taught this stuff. And this is really like related to the belonging culturally is that, it's very much tied to this, which is like these stories we were told as children, these like even the community and the churches that we grew up in. I grew up in a wonderful church in a small town in New Hampshire that just had this like beautiful connectedness that in some ways really lifted me up as a young child to be surrounded by elders, to be surrounded by, there was like Bruce Fox from the Friendly Farm, had like a petting zoo of like farm animals and that like was like, people still travel far and wide to. Oh, what bless his soul. And just like all sorts of the community elders and yeah, I mean, and it's just it's just that feeling that I had when I was alone. I had mono that was at this point advancing to the point I was like, oh, like like zombified, and I was like by myself, and I was in, like was it Munich, which is like super like was it Bavarian? Is it Bavarian? Is it the And it just like what it did for me, that connection that like was like, look, without even anyone here, I can still feel it. Is this thing like the connection with like the faith traditions that we grew up in? And it's like it's really, it's stuff gets so um mean, where it's like, how dumb can people be? But I just look at it as like, it's just dissonance and it's laughable because it's like, oh my God, like how strong this belonging and how strong these notions are that they like like, where logic, can't really break through. I mean, I guess in this context of TPM, it makes sense 'cause we know this is like reflex and emotion beneath conscious development, but whatever. Here we go. Let's read. Let's read. Let's go back. I'm gonna step out now. So, oh yeah, this doesn't get better. Yes, like, let's do something a little bit. Let's dial this back. Get ready. Okay, so oh god. Okay. Here. Where let's arrive. Okay, so transgender activist Janet Mock's first memoir, Redefining Realness: My Path to Womanhood, Identity, Love, and So Much More, states gender and gender identity, sex and sexuality are spheres of self discovery that overlap and relate but are not the same. Every one of us has a sexual orientation and a gender identity. Simply put, our sexual orientation has to do with whom we get into bed with, while our gender identity has to do with whom we get into bed as. Yeah. And it's interesting, like when even just a few years ago writing this, the notion of transgender was like had not taken on the kind of like where we are right now in this country in the US on the topic. It just really felt like it was progressing. Um And, like, the thing is that it's like it's like kinda there like, as I see it, it's like there's kinda like this, like, sort of, like, rapid progression and so and with, like, these notions of, like, expanding, like, identity in ways that are, I mean, look, I'm not gonna get into that, where somebody's like, "Oh my gosh, if you just think it's, like, transgender, it's, like, all these other things." It's like, that's fine. It's fine, but I'm not going that far with this. Yeah, because even there's a lot of stuff where people are like, "Anima and Animus," that's so, like, 101, and it's like, guys, like, part of the thing that's happened is that it's like the depths of the nuance in this exploration of identity um, are really overwhelming for people because the first notion hasn't even been sort of like and people are open to just feel really like stupid and scared of saying something wrong, and often accused of being wrong. Like it's kind of like, why don't it's like that the onus is, it's like this rapid cultural awareness um leaves some people feeling really like like afraid. But as far as like the notion of allowing this type of self-expression, integrity, and yeah, self-expression, integrity is just it really is like the forefront to like a depth of finding what is true within yourself. And back to this trusting yourself, I mean, it's like somebody says, like, I don't, if somebody tells you who they are, how they want to be identified, how they want, what they want to be called, I mean, it's just so ludicrous that it's like, you are not that. Like, what the fuck? It's just, it's so nuts that it's like this notion that it's like, if somebody says, if I were to say, I'm a man, that you like that like you telling me that that's not true is like has it's like honest it's just we're so deep and dynamic in terms of what we are composed of, and to just the exploration of these facets of ourselves is just to allow it to happen. I mean, just like the whole thing of like shutting it down before it's like, no, 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 no. So this was actually it's kind of interesting. So when I was 7 years old, this is a personal story in the book, one of the few that made the cut, but I think it's a good one, I think. We'll keep reading, we'll find out, you tell me. Tell me in the comments. So when I was 7 years old, I was stood at the end of the line for the teacups ride at an amusement park. It was the final ride of the day, and I was nervous about my position being last in line. But my fears about missing the ride were eclipsed when the ride attendant gestured to me and said, "There's room for one more. He can go." It felt like the wind got knocked out of me. For reasons I still don't fully understand, I was devastated and demoralized. I knew I was a girl, and being mistaken as otherwise upset something deep inside of me. As a child who felt very much that I was a girl, there was something profoundly upsetting to me about being mistaken for a boy that had nothing to do with my sexuality, an aspect of myself that at the time was still many years away from emerging. There was something important about myself that had not been seen, and the invalidation of it left me stunned and deflated. I remember just being in shock as I sat in that ride, and I was just totally taken out of it. It just was like, and that came up when I was writing this. That memory is really surprising. It's something I'd never thought about. Like my mom had cut all my hair off. Another story. You want to, look. One thing I'm very open about is that you don't write a book like this without having had your own share of interruptions. Um, yeah, the but the thing with this moment was that it came back up as I was developing Parinama was the flip side of what a transgender child goes through, which is knowing this part of yourself. I mean, it just so happens that it's like, yeah, like there was an identity that matched ultimately the cultural understanding. Like I felt like a little girl and like culturally was like understood to be a little girl. But the thing that that made me understand is like if it was flipped, if I felt like I was a little boy and I was in that line, it was me. And somebody just is like, she can go, even if that was like the identity, like I could feel like how that would feel. I could understand like that level of certainty about that being wrong. And I think there's something very ephemeral about gender. And I think it's one of the places where this discussion sort of stays kind of like shit, like, because I mean, in the chapter 6, we talk about, like, the transactionalness of masculinity, the lack of, like, sort of contextual thinking. We think about, like, feminine energy is, like, more about context and more expansive and more about implications and strategy. The, but there's something even more ephemeral here about what this means, what it means to like connect to this aspect of ourselves that I don't think we have a lot of access to understanding, like even what these distinctions are and what they mean for us outside of like a societal like context structure or whatever. That there's just something that's known about who and what we are in our integrity outside of social conditioning. There's like this sense of this, and also, I mean, even to that point that it's like I very, I personally have like a lot of like masculine traits that have like served me very well, a lot of masculine inclinations. So even this idea that I'm fully a woman, I don't understand that either. 'cause that was something that was, like, a very uncomfortable exploration for me during this process, is that I just, my surrendering into it was like, "Okay, well, we have to see whether we're gay," like, what, like, deep, like, the exploration of this part of my own identity, and, I'll and it wasn't something that was like, "Oh, here we go, let's just do this." It was like, really, I was like, "Oof." It was a tough go. It was a tough go to really, like, let myself see this, let myself, and so some of it is, kind of like my own personal process that stays with me, um but this story that I tell in the book is really about my own connection to this sort of ephemeral nature of what gender means, and what, people who might feel like they're two-spirit, or you could, like, feel it. 'Cause I know that at that really young age, I felt what I was, and I felt that it didn't match what I was called, and I remember sitting in that teacup ride just in shock and awe, just, like, taken out of it, like, just like, and I don't know if it was, eh, I guess, like, one of the things, it might have been, like, a panic, like, shame. But yeah, but I think this is something that is, probably why this is being, like, so politicized and polarized, is that to explore this is to come closer to an understanding of ourselves. Yeah. In our integrity and some of the nuances that it's like where, I certainly wasn't taught culturally to even contextualize. So it's just like this is where my level is. And I'll also say that I don't wanna, like, speak for other people in this, especially if they're not in the book and I haven't asked for their permission. But, like, speaking with activists and, like, folks who are, yeah, like, very, like, senior members of, like, the gay community, people who really came up and, that even, I mean, it's not like the level of sort of acceptance of this amount of, like, introspection is varied. So there's that, and it's hard, so we're going back into the, like, where this section starts out, which is, like, that tradition and belonging, and this and especially for people who do have, I mean, it's like to realize, like, for someone who is, who, like, comes out, or whatever the expression is, like, publicly transitions, just considering, like, what they're giving up, and to realize, like, think about the importance of your connection to your culture. Think about this, and think about, and to the just the what is familiar, and to think to, like, how much that your integrity would have to be on fire, like burning, to be seen and to be actualized, to step away from that. I mean, it is like it's like I look at, there are times when I was writing this where I really thought about transgender folks, um, and folks that are in the just in any kind of aspect of, like, non-binary stuff, just that like, really representing something that's very parinama, which is, like, the innocence and integrity about who you are, ultimately burning so brightly that it literally becomes, like, the lighthouse of your life that, that you, like and the sacrifices and the pain that children go through, thinking there's something wrong with them. I mean, anything where it's like where we're kind of telling people there's something wrong with you. It's like it's a good time to be like, yeah, okay. Let's like look at alternate exits or pathway, alternatives here. So, all right, that's it for this. Another long one. It's like a column. It's like a column. It's like an hour later. But yeah, I feel a lot better actually. Some of these are feeling like I mean, hopefully if you're still watching, this feels I don't know, like something. But yeah, so that's it for this right now. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Any interaction with this, it's hard to explain. Like there is like I definitely am compelled to do these, but um just the sense of like Mira, of course, Um Kristen, you left a heart. That gets some points. Anyone who's interacting with this, it means a lot to me. You're early. And yeah, likes and comments and sharing and anything. I mean, yeah, anything that's helping this become, because the thing about comments and likes on YouTube is it does increase its reach, shows that people are interacting with it, especially if you're watching these all the way through. Thank you. So I'm sending you lots of love, and I'll see you next time for Intimate Belonging with Eros and Thanatos. This one's really good. I wrote this really pretty early in the process. So this one is like kind of was like a load bearing beam in the creation of this chapter. But we'll talk about that later. Okay. I'll see you soon. Bye for now. Love you. Bye.